Okay, you probably all see a little pop-up box and said, now it's live streamed.
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
Wait, are you currently sharing the slideshow?
No, I'm not, but I'm gonna
okay.
go back to my screen.
All right. All right.
And then I'm going to, well, I am sharing it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm gonna, now I'm gonna do this. Oops, why it's not? Let me do the first page. I wanna have this on the, okay. All right, since we're live stream, I'm gonna mute myself until I'm supposed to talk.
Oh, where'd you get these?
My birthday. Someone gave it to me. Daniel.
Mm.
All right. Hi, everyone. I think, Lily, do you want to wait a couple more minutes for more people to come in, or?
Well, you are the host, so you
Actually-
decide. I certainly do not want to keep everyone who's punctual waiting, so we can give another minute and then I think we should just get started.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's already 4:03 right now, so I think we'll start at 4:04. All right, I think we'll start now, and if more people decide to show up later. Yeah. So, hi everyone, my name's Ethan Liu. I'm currently an 8th grader, but soon to be rising 9th grader. This is the second installation of the peer-to-peer series where we invite college students and soon to be young professionals to share their journeys throughout high school, college, and the beginnings of their careers. Please note that the session is being live streamed on YouTube, so it will be recorded. And also, please note that we'd like this event to be a bit more interactive. So if you have any questions during the actual interview, you can either put them in the chat or raise your hand to ask them live. All right, now I'd like to hand it off to our YLC advisor, Lily.
Thank you, Ethan. And thanks everyone who's here today. I also wanted to mention real quick, I am monitor the participant panel. So if you see a little gray box at the right corner of the screen, once we start a conversation, if you need to ask a question, you can either type in the chat box or use the gesture logos at the end, at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand, and then we will unmute you. But otherwise, during the conversation, in order to have an uninterrupted conversation, I am going to mute you if you forgot. Just about that. All right. So things not everyone on today's panel are part of Sharing Chinese School Youth Leader Club yet. So I am going to do a very quick overview of who we are. And thanks, Ethan, for kick us a start and to tell everybody that what is this series about. And it's hosted by Sharing Chinese School Youth Leader Club. This club is a youth-led community volunteer group. And as I have been telling all my members, I bring the philosophy of how I raise my own children, that this is the phase I'd like to be the advisor by their side to help them to engage in hands-on experiences and take initiatives, think independently, work as a team, and grow their confidence. And in one word, on their pathway, I'm hoping to be the springboard on their pathway to become a student leader. And these are the 4 pillars that I emphasize during this phase. In the future, as you go into college and start the first career, you will, the horizon will expand. You will know, there's a lot of qualities and comes to a good leader. But at this phase, I think these are the most 4 important pillars, initiatives when nobody else is, raising their hands, and you're taking initiatives, even though it might be something completely new. Nobody have tried it, and there could be challenges, but you have the courage, initiative to raise your hand and say, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to get it done. And then second, to go hand in hand with that is accountability. When you put your name on it and you really put yourself responsible to deliver what you said you will deliver. And there could be roadblocks, there could be challenges, but you have the perseverance to overcome the challenges and to work with the resources you have in hands to get it done. And another 2 things important is communication. Communication, not only be able to let people know what are you trying to do, what are you trying to accomplish, but also to communicate with the team member, the people around you, to build a good team to ally with you, to be able to get things done. And then, being there, being a good team player. So that's what, our model is, that we're trying to make it to be a student-led organization. You're on the driver's seat. I'm just an advisor. I'm in the back seat. I can give you guidance. I can give you advice, but I am not going to be the one that act as a teacher who teach you or tell you what to do. And we do committed to deliverables. We're a team-oriented organization. And one most important thing is, I tell everyone that this is open participation. You choose what you want to be engaged with. And also one important thing is, I don't want your parents to be the one who pressure you to join any of the sessions here or any of the activities here. You should be your own advocate. You decide how much you want to be involved with and how you want to be involved with. So that is everything about the Youth Leader Club. Now let's get to today's guest. I am so excited to introduce you Daniel Lee. Now I'm not going to read about his professional or college background. It's everything on the screen you can read right now, but I'm going to tell you a little bit like how Daniel and I got to know each other. So last year, and it was a very normal day at work. I was still working from home, and there was an email on my list, and I noticed the sender's name is Daniel Lee. At that time, there was some confusion, for anyone who know me in life, that I have my older son's name is Daniel, but it's Daniel Lu. And at that time, there was some communication mixed up with his sailing team, and someone was mistaking his name as Daniel Lee. And so at that moment, I was like, oh gosh, there is actually a Daniel Lee, and he's reaching out to me. And how did he know my work email? And guess what? There is actually a Daniel Lee, and he's a great person. I think you should know. And why? Because after a few conversations I had with him so far, and oh, by the way, at that time he was an intern with Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, and now he's going to start his career as an associate, a full-time employee with us in July. Back to why I think you should really, you made the right choice coming here to listen to Daniel. He has all these great qualities I was looking for in a young professional: self-advocate, passionate, responsible, and so much positive energies. And the list can go on. The most important thing is that I felt that he believes in helping people. He brought these positive energies, just build his network around him, not just to get himself ahead, but also paying it forward to help his peers, help the people he cared about to move forward together. When I asked him, are you willing to come and talk to our student? He said yes, without any doubt. He is a great achiever himself, and he's also a great mentor. He's a mentee, but he's also a great mentor. Now, that being said, when you listen to the conversations, the most important thing is not the tactics or strategies that, what he used to get him to where he is right now. I would rather urge you to focus more on why he chose to do what he do, and how he's doing it, and to feel the energy and to feel the motivation and to get a sense of, the kind of leader Daniel is. I hope by the end of the conversation, you will feel a little bit more inspired, a little bit more motivated. And one last thing, just enjoy a good company. Now, without further ado, I'm going to pass it back to Ethan. Carry it away.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lily. So I know you all just saw that great introduction there that Daniel wrote. But I'd just like to kick off this conversation by asking, is there anything beyond that you'd like to tell us about yourself? And just anything in particular that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to thank everyone for, inviting me, first of all. It's an honor to be here. And I think I want to emphasize in this session today, just to be focused on having fun while being proactive. That's like the main, if you learned anything today, that's the main takeaway.
Yep. All right. Thank you. So, yeah, let's start off with your college journey. So, you had a bit of an unusual journey in college. Not only did you change schools, you also changed majors. So I guess the first question I'd like to ask you is, what led you to decide to transfer?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I initially attended Stony Brook University and I studied journalism there, thinking I wanted to become a journalist. I was 18 years old at the time and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But the school lets you take a couple of courses where you can kind of explore different fields. So I took like a biology class, one philosophy class, and one business class, organizational behavior. And I took an intro class for journalism, and I actually wasn't that interested after taking the first course. So I transferred to the business school at Stony Brook right after my first semester at Stony Brook. And that caused me to think about, if I want to pursue this, I have to really dig deep and consider all my options. And the pandemic had hit. So we were back home spring semester. And so Stony Brook's program, their business program, wasn't accredited. So it's not really official. It is now, but it wasn't at the time I was attending their school. And so my sister at the time, she was interning for a law firm in Boston. And I was like, you know what, like, if I'm going to continue pursuing business as my studies, my passion, my career, maybe I should think of applying to different schools who are accredited, who are distinguished. And so that's kind of how I found myself at BC, but I'm sure we'll talk more about it in a bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And so my next question for you is, what opportunities has BC and or your transfer kind of offered that you didn't have previously? Obviously, is that at that time BC was accredited while Stony Brook was not, but I guess beyond that, is there anything else that you have to say?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the accreditation process, because I keep in touch with the dean at Stony Brook, and he's like, hey, Dan, we're accredited now. It sucks that you left, but we're accredited now. So, but focusing more on that question about how, like, what's the difference, you asked? So Stony Brook is more, for every one kid at BC, the population, I'd say there's around at least 20 to 30 students at Stony Brook. And so the student to faculty ratio, I think, was one thing that helped me the most, because at Stony Brook, it's really hard to engage with your professors on like a one-to-one kind of relationship. But at BC, they actually encourage students to, go out, have lunch with your professors, meet them beyond office hours or the classroom. So I think the student to faculty ratio definitely played a big part on me at BC.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so my next question is there anything that you really miss from Stony Brook? Anything that um you kind of, at BC you haven't really been able to have at the same way that you had at Stony Brook?
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that because a lot of people, when they find out that I'm a transfer student, they're like, oh, like Daniel, you must have, not really liked it at Stony Brook, which is probably why you transferred to BC. But apart from the academia and the academics, I actually really do miss Stony Brook. I actually went there a couple weeks back to go see my friends. And it's funny because the culture is different with the school, right? I'm sure this high school, Sharon High, it's a Chinese school, so I'm assuming there's, the Asian population is a bit greater. And at Stony Brook, at least 50% of the students are Asian, something I'm not really used to. So a very diverse group of students. And I really enjoy that. But at BC, it's a little less diverse. And so I went to the school and they're like, hey, there's something called the BC Look-Away where, say, Ethan, I know you, we're friends, but we don't really know each other too well. Instead of waving at each other when we see each other, you'll do something called a BC Look-Away, which is where you kind of like look away from your friend. I thought that was the funniest thing ever, but I will say there are definitely like cultural differences, and just by like demographics, it does change the vibe. It changes the mood significantly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And is there anything that you did while you were in the process of transferring that you think really helped you?
Yeah, for me, it's been a bit unconventional because it was during the pandemic. I think it was the mentality difference. So a lot of students who were thinking of transferring have always thought of it as like, oh, like, my name's Daniel Lee. This is why I have to offer, and this is why I like to get into your school. But for me, I already knew I had certain qualities, like certain qualifications, and I was thinking, I know what I can do. I just want to know if like this school, if your program can match what I want to pursue. And so I think one of the biggest things for these things is like, sure, you can fill out your applications and things, but also you should I reach out to the deans of the business school, and I still keep in touch with like deans from BU, Boston University, Northeastern, BC, obviously. But I think you should definitely reach out to more people instead of just trying to fill out the paperwork and submit that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I also really like that you talked a bit about reaching out to people and sort of networking, which is something that we'll touch on a little bit more later. But I still have one more question for you about college, which I guess you also talked a little bit about this, so I guess this really applies to you. But what advice would you give to students who are going to college but are not quite yet sure what they want to study?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So for any of you who are at the stage where you're considering going to college and you're like, oh, I don't know what to study, I think I'm living proof that you don't need to know, because, I was a journalism major at Stony Brook, transferred to business school at BC. But one thing I don't think even Lily knows is I actually changed my major like 4 or 5 times within the business school. Because once you're in that system, they let you try out any field you want. So I would take certain classes in accounting, certain classes in marketing, business analytics, business law. And I think from there, I kind of cherry picked things I wanted. And as late as junior year, the spring of junior year, I was declared my majors. So it's never too late to change. But I will say, if you do know what you want to pursue and you think it's too late, you should definitely just go for it. Just take the risk and study what you want to study, even if it means you might have to take another semester or even two.
Yeah, it's great to hear that, and I'm sure that helps out a lot of people that are maybe are a bit nervous about going into college and not really being sure about everything. But yeah, so now let's move on to now, which is your career. So first of all, congratulations on graduating college. And now you are starting your career at Bank of America, which is one of the biggest banks in the US. So could you talk a little bit about, first, could you explain what your first job will be and why you're excited about it?
台电的，你们走。
Yeah, sure. So I will be joining Bank of America after my internship that I had last summer. And I will be joining their strategy and management consulting group, as Lily mentioned. And did you want me to explain kind of what we do, or?
I think the main kind of what I'd like to get at with this question is, what about your new career are you like excited about?
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so it's a consulting program, and being one of those kids who have lived through the pandemic, which I think is a really great opportunity to learn from, I think we kind of have to come to understand that you can't really control everything. One day you'll be, having a picnic with your friends at college. The next day you'll be kicked out saying that there's a global pandemic. And so the field in consulting is very dynamic. It's not very static. It's very changing field. So one day you'll be doing work that's involved in fintech or even business law. And so I think that changing nature of the consulting program in strategy and management at Bank of America is something that suits me, because I know for a fact that I'd be bored of doing the same thing over and over again. I kind of like to change it up. So the dynamicism, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So next question is, I'm sure that besides coursework, practical skills and experience are also very important in order to begin a career or land a job. So what's some of the volunteer work or internship work that you've done throughout college that you think has helped you?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of volunteer work, I worked with Cornell, and they have an Agua Clara program. If any of you want to have volunteer, please reach out to me. They have diverse fields like in marketing. I was the chair of the communications committee. And it's a clean water initiative where you can just, take 1 hour from your week and help people who don't have clean water, hopefully get closer to that necessity that we don't really think about, for average people. And we're actually looking to recruit like new volunteers. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to kind of like mention it. Apart from Agua Clara, I also interned as a marketing and new business intern at UAP Urban Art Projects. If you look at like the Oscar Awards or really any artwork installed in New York City, like the Bowl, if you go to like a L'Oreal and you see like a grandiose like chandelier, everything that they do and you see in New York City, UAP covers it. So I think it kind of helped me expand my network and also view of like what I could possibly do in the like future. It was just kind of getting myself to a bigger scale and seeing the world from like a higher elevation, I think, seeing all the options I have.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it's great to hear that you also have, for any members of YLC that might be listening, it's great to hear that you also have a passion for volunteering, and it's kind of you also think that it's a very useful thing to be doing. Yeah, so next question is, what are some of the most important qualifications that you think you've developed through these experiences, whether it be volunteer or internship or
Yeah, I don't know if you'd necessarily call these qualifications, but I think the more I explore through internships or volunteer work, the best thing that you get is just experience in general. And again, I can't emphasize this enough, but I think getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is probably the most important thing that young leaders can take in and experience. So for me, even to talk to you all, a little bit uncomfortable, but I actually enjoy this because it gives me a chance to, practice my own skills and give you advice, of course. But working in teams is very different from working by yourself. And I think in the future, all of you will make great leaders. And if you want to start engaging with people, and if you want to start, having your ideas challenged and reinforce others' ideas and yourself, it's important to start early. So I think, yeah, teamwork, like Lily mentioned, accountability, all those things are great things that young leaders should start thinking of.
Yeah, and like you said, Lily stresses all of those qualities a lot, so it's great to hear that from you as well. So yeah, so now I want to get on to the networking that you were kind of hinting at earlier. So I've heard that networking is just important in general, but also especially for business majors and those looking to kind of go into the world of business. So I have two questions about that. Actually, I guess I'll ask them one at a time. So first, what would you recommend to high school kids with not really any prior connections? What would you recommend to them do to get started? Yes.
That's a really good question, and I wish someone asked me that when I was younger too. The best advice I would have for high school students is to start early, because I think once you start running, it's really easy to keep going, but it's that it's starting the engine that really is the hard part. It's the hurdle. So right after I graduated high school, I actually worked as a sales associate for a company called Theory, just a clothing store. And I started talking to people, and I would always be early for work. And so one day, the CEO of the company was doing like a check for a store, and it was random, completely random. Nobody expected it. And I was so uncomfortable. I didn't know who he was at the time. And we just started talking. And I think that small talk kind of sparked an interest in networking for me, not as a business professional, but just in general with friends and family. Because when you talk to these people, like your mentors, kind of like how I reached out to Lily, it's kind of like reading a book or watching a movie where you can live the life of a protagonist, but in a way they can give you advice. And you don't really have to take their advice either. You could just say like, oh, hey, like, this is not what I thought this kind of work would be. Thanks for, telling me more about it. But I think networking, you just have to start somewhere. So if there is something that you're interested in, a company, say like National Geographic, they have a photography club I'm interested in, I would just reach out to whoever is running the program. You could find their emails online, and then just reach out to them, because they're more than willing to reach back out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that Lily has a question actually. So go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just testing out, make sure that the raise hand works, and just wanted to mention one more time. Actually, I do have something I wanted to share. I just want to mention to everyone who take the advantage on the Zoom, and you can ask questions anytime you want by using the little buttons under there in the reaction function. and then you can, or type your questions in the chat box. Now, Daniel, I wanted to say you said it so right. And oftentimes we feel, oh, especially when you're speaking with someone, when you're at session with someone who feel like, oh, he's so big. He's the executive of the company. He's 10 levels higher than me. And I do not want to say anything that will sound stupid. And I don't want it to say anything that would leave a bad impression. And guess what? The leaders also have the quality that they actually appreciate every different type of persons who in the meeting room. And if you don't speak up, they won't see you. And anyone at any point, I can be a mentor to you all and be a mentor to Daniel. And I can also be a mentee at any time. And same as what Daniel shared, he's being a mentee and also as a mentor. It depends on the, occasions. Now, just last week, I was in a professional conversation hosted by Employee Networks, and the person who had developed and thrived his career being an executive in the company and around volunteerism. And when I heard about that, and I was so excited, and I asked him a simple question. I said, can you tell me how to talk to high schoolers about the value of volunteerism? And they sometimes just don't see it. And guess what? He offered to come to talk to us, in which you will, you will hear from me. It will be sometime at the beginning of September. Have that great conversation to learn everything, how volunteerism, how he started, and how he had thrived with all the works and brought his passion and turned into a meaningful career and made so much, impact on the community, on the people around him, and become a leader in the company, in the Fortune 500 company. So never afraid of ask and never afraid to speak out. And it oftentimes just takes that one try, and you might feel that your legs are shaking, but next time you will feel so much more confident.
I do want to add on to that story just because I thought of something. But during my summer internship, I was focusing mostly on consumer banking and wealth management. And so that's more on the sales side of Bank of America. And I wasn't really too thrilled by the kind of work they did. And so Holly O'Neill, who's the president of retail banking, she hosted an event for Boston interns. And she was like, oh, I just want every division to talk to themselves. And so I randomly approached a person who ran into me, and her name's Molly Turner, and she's an MBA student at BC, it turned out. And after we started talking, she started telling me about this strategy program. And she was like, oh, hey, you seem really interested in this program. Would you be interested in joining us? And I was thinking wait, what? I just talked to you. I met you 10 minutes ago, and you're offering me the opportunity to, try something I'm actually interested in. And so she actually pulled the recruiter aside, and she's like, okay, you're going to start talking. And that's actually how I got this interview with the director of the program, which led to one other thing, right? So I think it is important to kind of conquer your fears and just initiate that first conversation, even if you don't know where it's going to take you. And Lily, thanks for reminding me, because that just reminded me of that huge story. So
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing those stories. It was really interesting to hear about that. And yeah, I also really liked how both of you stressed that sometimes the hardest part is kind of the first step, but once you take that first step, it'll all come together basically. So on the flip side of that, now instead of you talking about you being mentored, I'd like to talk about you being the one who's mentoring. So whether it be being a peer advisor for BC undergraduates, or even coming to talk to us today, why is mentoring important to you? And we already kind of talked about this, but why is seeking mentors important for young professionals?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on this before, but people like Lily at Bank of America, who is a high member at the Leadership Network, and all the mentors I've had in the past, they are very like invaluable people to me because they give you the kind of advice that you can't really put a price on. You kind of keep it as you live, and you grow and grow and grow. And once you've achieved a certain position that you're slightly satisfied with, you kind of look back and you're like, I can offer the same advice too, like to my peers. And so BC, they have like a peer mentoring, peer advisor position. And I think all other schools will too. So definitely look out for those positions. I kind of wanted to just give back, and it's my form of showing my appreciation to the past mentors I've had. And I also really believe that you can increase the pie instead of having one pie and then just trying to split it. So you can all grow together. And I really like that prospect. So for me, mentoring is just like a way of not only giving back, but trying to help my peers succeed as best as they can. And I think that's really important for me.
Yeah, thank you. And I find it really interesting how you stress how I guess kind of being unselfish kind of helps everyone to grow together instead of kind of just doing everything for your own benefit. And
Yeah.
like, even if you do look at it as you're just doing things for your own benefit, just doing unselfish things anyways can just help with that anyways.
Yeah.
So
Just to add on to that. So I was actually really scared because going to Bank of America, I thought like everyone's going to try to just help themselves. It's going to be a tough environment. But the interns I worked with, they started helping like different teams for the projects, and they didn't really care about like sharing our solutions. So if we have like a homework assignment, we'd have a group in like California, one group in New York City. I was in Boston. And we just reach out to those teams and be like, oh, hey guys, do you guys want to work together? We found this solution this way, but we'd love to hear what you think. And I really do think that the people who truly succeed are people who aren't selfish and who learn to work together, as cliche as that sounds. You have to really think, you can't really think for yourself in those situations. You have to think together, for sure.
yeah, that's really great to hear. And okay, so that kind of wraps up the segment about your career. So now I think let's go kind of even further back, I guess, to your high school career, actually, which is where I suppose a lot of people listening to this conversation are kind of at the stage of. So I guess, what kinds of things did you do / enjoy doing in high school, both kind of just as extracurriculars and as just like hobbies, I guess?
Yeah, so I'm sure, I don't know if your school has like an honors program. Our school had like a National Honors like Society, I think it was called, NHS. And that's kind of where they start introducing students to volunteering. At the time, it's mandatory. So if you join the program, you have to fit in like, I think 5 hours volunteering every week. But for me, after doing those experiences, I was like, you know what, like, this is pretty cool. I want to take this a step further. And that's kind of how I reached out to Cornell. And I was like, hey, I saw that you have this clean water initiative, Agua Clara. I do this NHS program, and one of my peers mentioned about the program. I'm interested in applying. And that kind of was the jumpstart for me, like starting the engine we mentioned earlier. Other activities, I played the violin since I was 4. So naturally, I was in orchestra council. I was the president. I competed, and I also performed with like national scale orchestras. The most fun about that process is just having lunch with the people from around the world. I think you meet people from like Japan, people from Morocco. I still keep in touch with them to this day. I also played tennis since I was in like 7th grade. So we didn't have a JV team, so I applied to their varsity team in 7th grade. And I actually hated the sport because high school tennis, it's more about like getting the next ball over. And so my interest in tennis kind of degraded, so not too fond of that. But no, I think mostly it was just like National Honor Society, volunteering, which got me to more volunteering, orchestra and violin, and tennis. Those were my main things.
Yeah, cool. And I know we've talked a little bit about this before, not necessarily during this particular conversation, but do you continue to do any of the things that you did in high school? I know you've said that you really like tennis.
Yeah.
You kind of take tennis as a valuable tool to kind of like de-stress and just have fun with friends.
Yeah. So we left off on like me hating tennis because of high school. But the first day I went to Stony Brook, my roommate was like, "Oh, hey, Dan, like you play tennis, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do, but I don't really play because I don't really like it." He's like, "Oh, I have a friend, you know, he's really good. I think you should meet up with him." I kid you not, it was 2 a.m. the first day of college. We were at the public tennis courts playing in the dark. There was like one street light and he had his rackets. And so he kind of taught me to love the sport again. And so I do teach and I do play. I do follow the sport too. But it's kind of a way for me to escape from reality, I guess. So whenever I'm not working, whenever I'm not doing homework, you'll see me at the tennis courts most likely for hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear about how you kind of took something that was you kind of felt burnt out, if I think that's what I'm hearing. You took something that it kind of burnt you out for a while, and then you took it and you actually changed it into a positive for you. Would you like agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, even now at Bank of America, Lily's introduced me to some of her peers since I'm looking for a place to live, like an apartment in North Carolina. And I've already contacted like 4 people who play tennis, and we already have a group chat. So I think it's more than the sport; it's just having fun, and that's just how you even connect with more people.
Yeah. So, okay. Next question that I have for you is, how has your perspective changed since high school? I know that's kind of a very open-ended question, but like, is there anything that you'd like to share about it?
Yes, there is. So I think a lot of high schoolers tend to think that, and it's true, you can plan and execute to some extent. Like you could set up a Google Calendar, fill it up with all these colors with like barely any time in between, and then execute those plans. But in college, you really can't do that. You learn like it's kind of impossible to plan things to the minute. And I think I've been the most stressed in high school, even to this day. Like I'll take hard courses, I'll take an investments class, I might fail a midterm, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, cool. But in high school, I do think I tried to plan things to the minute and try to perfect everything. And I look back and I kind of regret that, because I feel like at that young of an age, you should just, you know, sometimes go outside with your friends, get some ice cream. That's just one example, of course, but I do regret not spending more time for myself and trying to like further myself in my education, if that makes sense. It's more of a time where I think you should just live life, and I think colleges too. But for sure, I just tell myself to like relax a little bit and take a chill pill.
Yeah, I know as that's great to hear, especially for a lot of kids who might have like high parental pressures and expectations, and they kind of feel like they kind of have to do everything perfectly in high school. Like, I think if I kind of getting you correctly, you're kind of saying like there is kind of a life beyond high school, and you can kind of like high school should kind of be just a time to like explore and have fun, right?
Yeah, so just to give you like a random story, my friend, he studied abroad. He went to Australia, and his mom was like, okay, like Nick, just be home before Thanksgiving. And so he went to Japan for like a week with like just a backpack and himself solo. And he came back and he's like, you know what, Dan, like if I could ever go back in time to like as early as elementary school or middle school, I would just this is not the best advice, but like say he had something he had to do, like a project due next Thursday or like a homework assignment due next Friday, whatever. He was just like, if I could do what I wanted to and just like not think of that extra homework assignment due 2 weeks later, I think I would have been a much more happier person. And his whole point was like, sometimes you have to not travel to foreign country, obviously, but sometimes you have to just do something you never expect you do and find fun in that and realize there's more to life than just those homework assignments, those AP exams, the dreaded SAT, ACT prep. There's so much more to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My final, I guess, question for the kind of, well, second to last, but final question of this high school segment is, what would you say to the high school version of yourself today? And I mean, you kind of touched on that, but is there anything like in particular, I guess, I'll change up the question a bit. Any like one sentence that you'd say?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So I think for high schoolers, a lot of you, I don't know if you're in middle school or rising high school students or even seniors in high school. One thing that I personally remind myself is that you have time. So what I mean by that is a lot of times I stress and I'm like, oh, like even if I don't eat breakfast, I don't eat lunch, I could just barely get this done in time. But most of the times you have just enough time to do exactly what you want to do and also more time. So I think there are a lot of anxious high schoolers considering like what colleges, what should I study? Like you don't have to have it figured out. If I looked back on my younger self, I'd actually feel a little sorry for myself. I just tell myself like, enjoy the ride. That's my one sentence. Just relax and enjoy the ride.
Great. So now I guess I know we've kind of had opportunities throughout the interview for the audience to ask questions, but now I'd just like to dedicate some time to any audience questions, I guess. So yeah, if any audience members have questions, you can either type them in the chat box or raise your hand.
Yeah, and I'm willing to answer any questions about like life, academics, anything in between. So it could be about anything.
Well, if everybody's shy, I'm going to ask a question. So looking back to your internships, what do you think you did right to earn kind of the next step and then the invitations actually to become part of the company?
Well, I don't want to like cherry pick everything you've mentioned in your previous slides, but I think taking initiative was probably my number one pick. Because sure, like if you intern at any company, they'll give you a set of work to do, but it's kind of like busy work. And oftentimes, like I said, you'll have plenty of time to do other things. So I think after I finished what was assigned, I would just take the time to, shoot an email to someone like Lily, someone in a leadership program, to just see like, what did these people experience when they're my age? And how can this information help me choose what I want to pursue? So really taking initiative and doing a little something extra will take you a long way.
Mhm. So I guess if there are no audience questions, we can kind of just do the closing question, which is, do you have one last piece of advice for any juniors or, oh, actually, no, there is one question. So you can answer that, which is, why did business end up being more appealing to you than journalism?
Yeah, so by business, the one class that actually made me transfer to a business school or business setting is actually organizational behavior, which is like business psychology. It's not even like a technical class. It's more like if certain people don't comply to certain rules, what would the majority think? Like really simple things like that. And I think during the pandemic, that was like an exceptionally dynamic way of learning, like how certain institutions work differently during different times. Journalism, I thought would be interesting before when I applied, but it just didn't turn out what I expected it to be. So I would always encourage to like try something you think would be fun. And if it doesn't meet that expectation, it's never too late to change. And I know a lot of people who are finance or marketing majors because their parents were like, oh, you have to study this, subject because we studied it and it works. But for me, it's a little different, right? I studied business because I wanted to. So I think the appeal in college is just trying out different things. So if you get an opportunity to take a journalism class, an OB class, or like a psych class, I would just take all of them.
Yeah. And then we also have another question. So
Sorry.
I guess we have another question from, well, Lily's screen, I guess, but so not Lily. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. I was watching on YouTube. I wasn't on the Zoom. Sorry for stealing Lily's screen. So my question was, when you're making that initial email to reach out to someone that like maybe doesn't know you or knows you very minimally, like what do the contents of that email look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of the times I don't like to write like 100-page book, obviously, about my life, but I do enjoy storytelling and kind of like so for Lily, for example, I would say like, hi, my name's Daniel Lee. I'm currently interning for the company that you work for. I study this and that. And I kind of tell them the reason why I'm emailing them in the first place. So for Lily, I just want to know, like, what is the Asian Leadership Network at Bank of America? How does it work? And I kind of want to just ask questions and learn about their experiences. So I really open it up for the person I'm emailing. But mostly I just want to hear their experience working at the company. So for Lily, she has quite a few years above me at Bank of America. And so I just want to know things from like company culture. What do you think about the people you've worked with? Do you think, as an intern, if you looked back at yourself, would you consider continuing working for this company? Things like that. And Lily has, helped me with a lot of things. She's been a spectacular mentor for me at Bank of America. So that's just one thing, but I think I just try to listen and learn from the people I email.
Great. So final question. Do you have one last piece of advice for juniors or seniors on the call that will be heading to college soon?
Yeah, so I think for juniors and seniors who are currently headed to college, the way I thought of it, at least when I was a senior in college or high school, was like, if I adult or if I get closer to, becoming an adult, the more things will be certain, right? The more I'll be closer with like a stability, something I could depend on. But that couldn't be further from the truth, right? I think as you grow older, as you grow more independent, you just learn how to deal with uncertainties in life. How can you make opportunities from those uncertainties? So the biggest takeaway, as I said in the very beginning, would be to focus on having fun is first and foremost. And also second would just be to stay proactive. You don't have to just have fun and that's it. You could also, see what piques your interest and try that as a hobby. It could be tennis, it could be work-related volunteer. So staying proactive would be my advice.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Daniel, for giving us your time to kind of share a bit about your experiences. And thank you to everyone listening as well for coming and listening to us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's
Hope
just about-
everyone enjoy the summer.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.